Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Adult Music, the podcast with music for the adult mind. This is Russ here with Mike.
Yeah, we're back, ready for more.
And season's greetings, Mike.
Well, season's greetings? What does that mean? What season is it?
It looks like it's the rainy season.
Oh, the rainy season. Oh, this is a Japan thing. You're going to have to explain
it's
this.
a Japan thing. So every year we get a seasonal or a season of rain, but it usually comes in June and lasts sometimes into July. But it looks like this year is going to be one of the earliest on record because it's already started raining and there's no sunshine in the forecast.
What is the greetings part of that? And you're greeting the rain or something? I don't know. I kind of wish it was sunny out, really.
Yeah,
although
so do I.
It doesn't really matter because there's nothing to do at night here anyway.
That's right. Still under prohibition.
We're still in prohibition. Yeah.
And
which is kind of
it's
sad.
not even fun to go outdoors. So I guess we'll just have to stay inside and listen to more music.
There's not much to do. I feel like people used to live like this maybe 500 years ago before all the concert halls were built.
Yeah, but I don't think
when you had to go to church to hear music.
Yeah, the hi-fi equipment wasn't really good back then, so.
No.
Yeah, so
some of those churches were really acoustically built. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't need good speakers when you had acoustics like that.
We still hear concerts in those places to this day, and they're among the best. It's really fantastic.
They are. And, well, we've managed to find a bunch of interesting combination of music styles and things for the listeners this week.
Yeah, we're all over the map here in classical. We're going through all the moods.
That's right. But before we jump in, I'd like to remind our listeners that in the episode description, you'll find links to Spotify and Apple Music for all the music we'll discuss. And at the top of the description is a link to the full episode playlist, all the music in one place on Deezer, or you can follow us at username Adult Music Podcast. If you can't see the full description or list on your app, please check us out on our host, Podbean, where everything is nice and clear. If you enjoy the podcast, please follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. And if you give us a ranking or write a review, it will help us get listed in the browsing category recommendations, which will help us grow our audience. So it would be much appreciated. And if you'd like to contact us directly with any comments or questions, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com.
Yeah, and all who have been listening up to now, thank you very much. We're actually closing in on 1,000 downloads. It's a real landmark.
That's right. It won't be long. Yeah, we've gotten some interesting emails from people concerning music they'd like us to listen to and talk about. And so that makes us happy. So
yeah, that makes us happy. Keep sending that. That's fantastic. Yeah. And we might actually listen to it. We'll have to see.
We might, if we can put it into
I think we'll listen to it.
I'm sure we will. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
it's always good to hear new music.
Okay, anyway,
today we're in classical, we're gonna do what we usually do. We start from we're gonna go in kind of time order, as always, but this time we're starting in the beginning of the Romantic era, the early 19th century. That's the 1800s, and we are starting with a new recording of the by Alina Ibragimova, Russian violinist who I think lives in England these days, and she has recorded the 24 Caprices by Niccolò Paganini, these fearsome works for the violin. Now, the reason she recorded these, by the way, are because of the lockdown. I think she was in England, locked down her apartment. She just decided to learn these and record them. And in fact, there are a lot of recordings like that coming out, and we're going to be talking about three of them. Well, we're going to be talking about three solo violin recordings. This is the first of a three-part series. They're not all going to come in successive weeks, but one of them is going to be another violin virtuoso who recorded the Isse solo violin sonatas when he was locked down. That's James Ennis, and he recorded them in his home studio. So that's even more kind of do DIY than this recording is. And then there's one more, a new recording of the Bach Sonatas and Partitas for solo violin, which I really love, by Augustin Hadelich, and we'll be talking about those pretty soon, I think. I like that violinist a lot. Actually, I like all three of them, but we'll check these out and see what they're like. Okay, well, so the first in the series is this Paganini 24 Caprices. Now, I'm not very familiar, or wasn't, now I am. I wasn't very familiar with these works before I heard them. I only have 2 other recordings of them, and I don't really listen to them much. One reason is because there are 24 of them, and they're all kind of similar. They're all built the same way. They're ternary. All of them, I think, or almost all of them, are ternary form. That's ABA. So you have like an A section, then there's a contrasting B section, and the A section repeats. Sort of like an Oreo cookie. I used to tell my students, you have the outer hard part, and then the soft, white, creamy middle part that everybody likes. That analogy doesn't really hold too well with Paganini, because the middle sections are usually very quickly played scales. Anyway,
these are rather etudes, right? They were written as, from what I gather, reading about the history of these, there are studies to practice, skills and various technical things and positions on the violin. But
right.
Apparently there was another series of famous etudes at the time, but Paganini thought they were rather too boring and unattractive, and so he wrote these to also make something more musical and rewarding out of this type of, material that you
right. It's notable to say he didn't call them etudes, even though they are kind of studies in this new violin technique that really he came up with. Now, he didn't invent this out of the blue. I think it was he had these very old set of sonatas by Locatelli. I think it was him. I'm not really sure who it was now.
I remember.
Italian violin virtuosos. They really came up with all of that. Think about Vivaldi and the Baroque era.
And they were written in. I read 3 groups of 6, 6, and then 12.
Yeah.
So they're not really sequential or meant to be listened to in order for any particular program reason.
In fact, they're not even if you take like the first 6, they're not even meant to be listened to all together. They're all they're all kind of samey. I think they're kind of they're meant to. I think he actually performed these but usually as encores, or no one would do a whole concert of these. I would hope anyway. It'd be a little too much of a good thing. They also don't hold together like as a group as like say the Chopin, because they don't have any kind of key structure like the Chopin preludes or the Bach well-tempered clavier. Even though those are pedantic works, they go in a certain key order, so there's some sort of something leading them through. These are just 24 works that he wrote over a period of 20 years or so, a little less than that, and he just published them all together as his Opus 1. Okay, well, anyway, I put on the old Bowers & Wilkins PX7 wireless noise canceling headphones one day and started walking down the street and listening to these. And by the time I got up to about the 3rd or 4th piece, I was kind of not terribly excited. I was listening to these and saying, what am I going to say about this? Because it was just this violin technique, and it was pretty. You had to listen carefully for the technique, because a modern violinist can generally play these extremely well. Yet there are amazing things happening, which you notice when you actually watch them. When you listen to it, you got to listen carefully. There are a lot of like octaves in the melody, and it's really crazy double stopped octaves, and they're really subtle. It's really incredible when you see it and when you think about what's happening, but when you hear it and they're doing it so well, you don't really notice how spectacular it is. Now, the thing about these, I realized that I needed something to compare them to. Now, usually I'll have something in my head, but like I said, I'm not as familiar with these works as I am with some others. So I had to dig into the old CD collection. And it took a lot of digging to find what I was looking for, because I have so many of these CDs. But I have 2 other recordings of these Caprices. One is by 1972 recording by Itzhak Perlman, a very famous recording, because he was the violinist of the day.
Yeah, I listened to that one too.
Yeah, and the other one I had was Julia Fischer, and
yes.
So I compared that one too. She's a German violinist, and that one came out in 2010, and it was really highly regarded at the time. By the way, there is one by Augustin Hadelich, but which I haven't heard yet. I should probably give those a listen to.
A lot of reviews on Amazon I saw for that, and
I bet it does, because he's a really great violinist. He's
I also
really
listened
something.
to the Shlomo Mintz on gramophone recording of this to compare it as well.
Okay. Well, I thought that was going to be a little too... I barely got through these.
Well, I didn't listen to every single one.
I listened to every single one.
Oh, okay. I mean, I listened
on all
to
three record, but I listened to them. I programmed them into my my iPod Touch. I do not have an iPhone. It's an iPod Touch. And I programmed them into the playlist as like, back to back to back, so I could just kind of hear the different approaches. All right, so the conclusion I drew, first of all, was that Itzhak Perlman is a violinist's violinist. He's really amazing, okay, compared to these two other really great violinists. He characterizes the pieces so that they kind of sound like something sort of familiar, like a familiar rhythm or like a type of now the other two do that as well, Ibragimova and Fischer, but he does it very consistently, and he almost always takes the faster tempo, which is really unbelievable.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah, he's very fast, and what an incredible flawless technique he had. Okay, now Ibragimova, this is the recording under review this week. This is a double CD album, and it clocks in at 1 hour and 40 minutes. The other two that I heard, the Fischer and the Perlman, are all 72 minutes long.
Wow.
This is a half hour longer than the other two, and it's not because it's slower. Although she does take a slower tempo on quite a few of these recordings. She does all, I don't know, I didn't follow it with a score, but all of the repeats.
Oh, okay.
Usually have like a double bar, and with a dotted double bar. I don't mean to repeat the section. Yeah, because
I didn't compare the other performances completely. I just picked a few of the numbers that I was most interested in, and I noticed that for most of them the time length discrepancies were only a few seconds, but then I noticed some were almost one third
three
to
times as long.
Yeah. So that explains it then, right?
Yeah, they were like some of them were under 3 minutes, and then hers Ibragimova's would be 6 minutes long. So in a way, it's kind of nice to have like a catalog of these as they're written like that. And I like hearing the repeats generally. In this case, it may have been too much of a good thing. Her performance, so it's a 2 CD set, this one, but it's the price of one, thankfully. I mean, if you had to pay double for this, it would have been kind of, you would have wanted to go for someone else, I think. Okay. I singled out the number 7 Posato movement as being seemingly very, very long. It just seemed to keep going on and on with all the repeats. Okay. But another odd thing about the Ibragimova recording is that she doesn't give any of the pieces nicknames. And that kind of says something about the performance. Like some of them have nicknames like the Hunt or, the things like this. And she just gives the directions. And it kind of says something about her approach. She's more into the mechanics, getting the technique. Like you get the impression that she's, locked down and she's just working this out. And she recorded what she worked out, as opposed to, someone like Perlman who's going to just kind of really trying to give a bravura performance. Now, that's not to say this isn't a great performance. It's I don't know if it's great, but it's very good. Let me get to that. Okay, so I was kind of unexcited by this. When I was recording them, I was thinking, oh boy, Perlman is like so much better. And Fischer has like a nice sort of approach too. Now, Ibragimova, she's really one of my favorite violinists. I have like all of the recordings she's made for Hyperion. I like her very kind of. She's got a smaller tone than a lot of virtuoso violinists. That's kind of more sensitive, and I kind of like that kind of intimacy. Mostly because I don't get any in real life, but that's beside the point. Now, in this one, she's not terribly like smaller tone. She really goes for a bigger, bolder tone in a lot of these and achieves it. But
actually, that's my main comment on these. Not being a string player, I can admire the technique, and I could also appreciate the interpretation that she was doing. And I read other reviews, people talking about how her performance and interpretation of these was much appreciated by violin players, and I could follow that and understand it. But I had a real problem with her violin tone here because. Well,
it's a little different than on other recordings. She's very closely recorded.
Yeah. Upon first listen, when I got to the second number, the image that came to my mind was washing windows with newspaper, and that squeak.
Which one is that? The second one?
Yeah, well, in all of the numbers, it's just a general overall tone, but I noticed it on there. And then when I really started comparing to, the other, I mean, Perlman and Mintz recordings are much older, but they have a very much more dark centered tone. And then even Fischer, I found her tone to be, much more even and enjoyable for me. And it was just too much high register violin for me, which is something I don't really enjoy. But at the same time, I noticed that the other recordings, as far as acoustics, are rather, how can I say, dead sounding. There's not a lot of room or hall sound. Yeah, they're old. Yeah. But the Fischer one is only 10 years old. But there's a lot of room reverb or room sound in this recording, and that's not a bad thing. But unless the microphone is extremely close, and that's why these extreme high tone seem to dominate it to me. I don't know. I have heard several of her other recordings, and I don't remember it as much. But with just solo violin, I found myself preferring the Fischer recording to this one.
She's actually, I preferred the Perlman, I think, but again, it is an old recording. It's you can kind of tell it's an analog recording. Now, Ibragimova often, she's done quite a few solo violin recordings. She did the Issa and the Bach sonatas and partitas as well, and I like them both. So I was kind of looking forward to this one. So I started out a little disappointed, but as I compared these like piece by piece, and I was kind of like, the other two are a lot better. But then as I went on and I heard some of her, like her uniqueness in some of these works. For example, I liked her, let's see, in number 6, the trill, I liked the rocking motion that she got on the opening, which the other two didn't do. Perlman has a much faster approach, and Fischer was slower and got a nice haunting quality on that one. The very famous one, The Hunt, which is number 9, the violin melody mimics hunting horns, and being that this is Paganini, more than one hunting horn. It's not just one. Right. It's pretty amazing. You can the line is there. Okay, I thought Perlman was better in this one too. But I thought Perlman was too fast, so I thought that Ibragimova got like a good sense of the hunt, you know what I mean? Like I was more in that moment. I liked her in, let's see, which one did I like a lot? Oh, number 13, The Devil's Laughter, which is the, if you listen to that, number 13, you'll hear like these opening notes, and then there'll be this descending double-stopped scale. That's supposed to be the Devil's Laughter, like that. Ibragimova, more than the other two, really characterizes here. She goes for something kind of slinky and sensuous, she's like she's trying to seduce. It's coy, it's seductive, it's teasing, and then the middle section is something a little nastier and reckless. I thought it was really I characterized that performance as naughty. Okay, whereas the other two, Perlman went for the technique in that one, and Fischer had a kind of dance feel. I really liked her creativity there. That's a number 13. I have all these notes here, and they're all about Perlman because I like their recording so much. Okay. And then as it went on, though, and I started to see how Ibragimova's performance was different than the other two, I really started to warm to her personality because I had heard so many of her other recordings, and I kind of know a little bit about what she's going for. So I would say for this one, it's mostly for fans of this violinist. I think if you like her, you should definitely hear it. I think if you're gonna the thing is there are misses on the Perlman and Fischer recording as well as on this one. Nobody seems to play all 24 of them above and beyond everybody else. Right. So she's got a few here that are really good. She'll generally take slightly slower tempos, especially compared to Perlman. Fischer will take some slower tempos too, but her personality comes through as they go on, and I don't know that it's that she got better. I think it's more that I warmed to it, or my ears started zeroing into to her tone and what she was doing. So I would say for fans of hers and for violin players who really want to hear these as they're, with all the repeats and things like that, I would say give this a listen. Now, if you don't know these works and you want to hear this recording, I would say listen to 3 to 6 at a time, because this will drive you crazy. It's just way too much of the same sound. It's pretty amazing. She has a fantastic sense of well, all three of them do really. That I heard a sense of the tone, the note. So just these giant leaps up to the top of the violin, and she'll land right on the pitch. That's the word I'm looking for, the pitch. And pretty fantastic. And very few squeaks. You can hear some of those in Perlman, even though he's like going much faster. It's a very clean performance, a little tentative at times, but enjoyable enough. And I find this violinist playing endearing, so I found this performance endearing in parts too. And that's what I would have to say about it. Give it a listen. Anything else on that?
Not from me. No,
not from you.
I can listen to solo cello for a long time, but solo violin I have kind of a limited attention span myself for. So
see the Bach, sonatas and partitas. That's generally a 2-hour thing. I can listen to those straight through, but they're special. They're really very varied and things like that. These were harder though, because they're all kind of similar in form, and then the techniques are often kind of just sort of variations on similar sort of techniques, just put together in different ways.
Probably of great interest to violinists, and
absolutely.
And it was fun to compare anyway. For me.
We didn't mention, by the way, number 24, and this is a very famous one. It's the one that was set by Rachmaninoff. Singled this out as the theme in his Paganini variations for piano. So it's sort of a theme of variations, the most famous one of these three. And the three of these were kind of similar, I felt like. I actually liked the Ibragimova the best of the three here.
And these have also been adapted for other instruments. There's some performances of them all on guitar and things like that too. So, if you enjoy that program, you can find sort of other adaptations of it that may be of interest too.
Yeah. One thing you want to keep in mind when you listen to Paganini, though, you hear that violin, but he had a huge influence on piano technique as well, because pianists heard him, and like Liszt heard him and said, hey, that can be done on the piano too. And he developed this whole new transcendental technique for the piano out of Paganini. So Paganini has had a huge influence on music. Some people might think it's kind of a bad influence, because he made sort of virtuosity a requirement for playing these instruments, which means like schmoes like you and me can't just go home and play them anymore. You need years of schooling to be able to develop some of the techniques used to play this music.
Yeah,
and everything that came after it, really, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. All right, so little Paganini there. Okay, moving on. We've got some opera for you, and this is Ludovic Tézier's recording of Verdi arias. Now, Tézier is a baritone, and I really chose this because we've been doing so many sopranos this year. I don't think we even did any mezzo sopranos. I'm not really sure, but I figured we had to get some men's voices in there, and we got one of the manliest ones, the baritone voice. Tézier he's really a romantic, big toned baritone. Sings a lot of Italian opera, and here and he often will star. He's kind of a really good partner with Jonas Kaufmann, really the big tenor of today. And it's my understanding that the both of them are doing an album of duets that's going to come out later this year, and we'll certainly have to hear that, because that'll be sort of a big release, I think. I'm kind of curious to hear what they program on that. But here we have Tézier alone. Well, not alone, but doing some baritone arias from Verdi operas. Now, in Verdi's operas, generally the tenor has the better tunes, as does the soprano, naturally. I mean, you think of La Traviata and all these kind of fantastic arias that Violetta gets to sing. But baritone, he singled a few. He pulled out a few of these that are pretty interesting. This recording starts with it has a really interesting opening. Normally, when you listen to a recording of opera arias, you'll hear like the orchestra come in first, and then like, you know, prepare you for the voice, and then the voice comes. That's like the magic moment where you're going to hear the singer's voice. Well, Tézier has chosen to program an aria from La Forza del Destino. He gives the recitative first, morir, tremenda cosa, and then goes on to the aria. Okay, after Egli salva. Okay, urna fatale del mio destino, etc. It's got a long title, but this starts with no orchestral accompaniment. You push the button on your player, and the first thing you hear is morir, which means to die. So you're already like, whoa, what's it's this deep kind of baritone voice saying the word to die, and with no accompaniment, and it's all so stark. Really quite a mood-setting moment. A really bold and a little cheeky way to start an album of your favorite Verdi arias for baritone. Morir, tremenda cosa. A big thing, okay, or an important thing, okay? A terrible thing, tremenda, okay? Okay. And he goes on. All right, so the first part of this program, it's got a very long aria, okay? It's sort of, just by starting without the orchestra, you really get the sense that you're getting an idea of Verdi as a dramatist, and not as a composer too, but Verdi the dramatist comes out really strongly in this entire program. He's it's really, I think that's, you know, he had great melodies, but it's really the drama and the melody that really made him like the Italy's #1 basically composer as far as like being famous goes. I mean, Italians love Verdi's operas. Let's see. Okay, the opening of the program starts with that. He goes into like the second track. Now, Tézier is French, by the way. He's a French baritone, and he does the French version of Don Carlos. He takes an aria from that next, and this has to do with who's the character? It's I didn't write about this one. Oh well. Anyway, it talks about the death of one of the characters. Okay,
I really like this one.
Yeah, it's very dramatic, and also kind of pulls out. He's going really for the nobility of the baritone voice in this. Okay, and this is really what baritone voices are all about. They kind of add weight and nobility, and that's what these opening arias are all about. The third track is Ernani e questo il loco, and also going for something a little noble here. Okay. After that, two arias from Ernani actually. After that, in track 5, he does an aria from Falstaff, and this is where this recording really picked up for me. Now, Falstaff is a baritone role, but he doesn't sing Falstaff here. He sings Ford, okay, whose wife has, along with two of the other wives, have sent letters to Falstaff wanting a rendezvous with him in the woods where they're going to trick him, okay? But Ford gets a copy of the letter and thinks that his wife is giving him a pair of horns, as it were. Okay, he thinks she's cuckolding him, and this is
adult music.
This is adult music all the way. Okay, Ford is like, first of all, he's really angry. There's dramatic flair in this. He starts out angry, and then he's like pathetic by the end, and he's like pleading. He wants his wife back, and all of this, and we really get to hear Tézier like change the his flair for dramatization. You can see why he's one of the great baritones of today, not just for the deep, rich voice, but for his ability to like characterize in this. I really love this particular aria. This is the first one that has real emotional ugliness in it. And I really love that about opera, just these awful emotions that you just don't ever want to feel, but somehow you love seeing other characters portray on the stage. It feels really, really terrible. Ford is like this, and Iago is like this too from Otello. We'll talk about that later. I also love in these kind of arias, like in Falstaff, when the characters get angry, they'll like just hurl out these words like sotto, no, I said it wrong. Sozzo reo, like they're throwing darts at somebody, and these pointed words are just landing at their target. It's really a nice technique, and he really makes those words feel pointed here. I really enjoyed that. Okay. There's a little bit, by the way, in this performance, if you remember the if anyone's older than us, the baritone Tito Gobbi kind of comes to mind in this particular aria, although Gobbi played Falstaff very, very famously. There's a little bit of that kind of like that. Gobbi would do like this nasally sound when he was being really sinister, like he'd kind of get a little bit of the tone through his nose, and it would just sound kind of ugly, like the character he was playing. I heard a little bit of that in Tezier's voice here. Okay, after that, we move on to Il Trovatore, where the Conte di Luna is expressing his tempestuous love for Leonora. Oh, he wants her. The passion doesn't come across as strongly in Tézier, but it's very good. It just might be his interpretation of her, because this character ultimately isn't worthy of Leonora, and he kind of sounds like he might feel he's unworthy in this aria. Next, we have La Traviata, one of the most famous operas ever, and he's singing Guermante's father here, and Guermante's father is kind of a real stick in the mud in this opera. He's got two really beautiful but very square sort of arias, and this is one of them. This is Di Provenza il Mar, which he sings to his son, trying to get him to come home from the wayward woman, the Traviata Violetta. Okay, and this song, it's like a folk song. It repeats, it has these even lines. The words repeat a lot. It's a real tricky aria to sing because it can sound really wooden in the hands of like a just an amateur singer. They'll just tend to keep singing the words and not really characterize. But Tézier, as you would imagine, being the top baritone he is, keeps it interesting. But varying his tone on the word. He makes a great climax
in this one. You just think he can't have any more, but in that Di Provenza il Mar, I mean, he just keeps it building, and I was really impressed with. That climax
he
of the
kind
phrase,
of reins it in enough to not be maudlin, and that's a real trick in an aria like this, because this could really sound like kind of maudlin. He has this pleading quality in his voice, and he subtly varies the repetitions. It's just really beautiful singing, really, making this aria really work. Okay, then we get Macbeth. He's Macbeth here. This is another one of these great dramatic interpretations where Macbeth starts out overconfident. He's definitely going to win, like his, because he knows that he's been prophesied that no woman born of man will defeat him. Okay, and so he's just hurling out these kind of like threats to his enemy in this one. The next one we have Nabucco pleading with God, and I feel like Tézier was really in his element in this particular aria. He's got that nobility, and he's also got this higher power that he's trying to make a deal with, shall we say. Then came for me the highlight of the whole recording, because I love this aria. This is Iago, his credo to the evil god that he believes in, and it's just this awful feeling, kind of like really powerful lyric with fantastic little orchestral stabs in it, and just his sort of evil and craziness really comes out in this. I just love it. It really makes you feel awful in a fascinating kind of way. Sort of like a. Just you're watching like a car wreck or something like that from far away. It's just this fascinating thing, watching this evil person spout off about his crazy beliefs. Okay. By the way, I want to say there's something really weird happened on this track, the Otello one, and it happened in the next Rigoletto one too. The orchestra seems like it's recorded much closer on these two tracks, and he actually Tezier's voice one of the lines actually gets covered over by the orchestra. I was kind of wondering about that. What's happening with the engineering here? Rigoletto sounds like it was recorded the same way. And in this one, he's portraying the hunchback, Rigoletto, who feels like everybody's against him, and he's like lashing out at them. But as the aria goes on, he starts pleading, about his daughter, who he loves way too much and will pay the price for at the end. That it's the only thing he has. He's kind of an evil character himself, but he loves his daughter, and he's just pleading with them to leave her alone, let him have her, and then they could come for him if they want. Very touching. Okay, there's a little human element to Rigoletto in the aria Cortigiani, vil razza dannata, vile, damned race of people. Okay. Wow. Yeah. We get two arias from Bello in Maschera. One is kind of like a love song, Alla vita che taride, and then Alzati la tuo figlio has again the emotional going on the emotional rack again. Okay, complex emotions, threat, regret, hatred. And ends in heartbreak, or in a heartbreaking ending. You really feel for this character. The last track on the album is aria number 2 again, only this time sung in Italian. Again from Don Carlos. Really nice. I like this better in Italian, to be honest. The original was in French, by the way. Verdi had gone to France and written it for a French premiere. But there was an Italian version made of it too, and premiered, I guess, a year or two later. So anyway, recommended. I would say I was happy to hear this voice. Nice to hear a baritone, too. You don't really get too many solo recital from baritones these days, and this is one of the best out there at the moment. So give it a listen, I would say, especially your opera fans.
Yeah, for me, now I can watch an opera and enjoy it, but if I'm just listening to opera excerpts or something, I really tend to be drawn to the more song-like numbers rather than any recitations. And because
you often don't know what's happening in the recitations too, unless you know the opera.
I don't know much Italian either. So, but Verdi has, he has the best melodies, doesn't he? I mean, his melodies are always great. So, when I heard Tézier's voice, anyone's reaction to a voice are very personal. Whether it's a spoken voice or a singing voice, and you either warm to it or it rubs you the wrong way. But he has a voice that I could listen to all day. I mean, he could read menus or something and it would be great.
Baritones are nice on the ears in general, I feel,
And so it's not just that
they're reassuring.
The tone of his voice. What I like about it, he has great power. He has range. Throughout his range, he has a completely balanced tone. He doesn't become something different when he's going higher or lower. And most of all, he has incredible control. So his tone is never sacrificed in this. And then what I noticed also is that he really shows restraint, which we don't get a lot of with, some other, like tenors and sopranos. Sometimes, I feel like I'm beaten up. But
certainly not with sopranos.
Yeah. What I noticed here is, like in this recording, because I looked up how it was recorded because I was interested in the sound of it. He always saves enough for when the orchestra comes in behind him that he's got that much more, and he balances it really well and leaves enough for the climax. So he never starts, beyond what he's going to be able to project to the end point
he paces
that he needs
himself
to go to.
really well.
And he does that really well. And
Mark of a true professional.
Yeah. And what I noticed also in this recording, it's extremely warm sounding recording. The high frequencies are very tempered. You weren't going to get a lot of outstanding strings or other kind of detail coming through. So the voice is always sort of easily heard. But I also found out it was largely done with just 2 Omni mics, and so I read an interview with him, and he talked about how it was recorded. And they used a few other mics maybe to bring out a harp sound or something in small parts. But basically it was 2 mics. So I imagine that they had, calculated the distances very well. So maybe on those points where the orchestra seems to overtake him or something. Maybe he had moved or something, unexpected had happened.
You always have to keep that in mind, because people move, they're not just standing in front of the microphone. Often they'll kind of like emote and they'll sort of lean back or something, and you kind of lose a little bit of their sound.
But despite that, with this just 2 mic recording, it does sound really natural. The voice is right there with the instruments, and the balance is very good for almost everything. But it sounds surprisingly a little bit dark, which I kind of liked, because his voice was always right there and present. You could sort of almost see him right there. So even myself, not a great opera fan, I was a huge fan of his voice. So my comment on liking the song-like numbers, my favorite picks were track 2, and then of course we have the Italian version of it, but the Écoute, is that it in French, from the Don Carlos Act 4?
Yeah, Écoute.
Track 4,
Carlos, Écoute.
The Hernani, Vieni Mecco, Sol di Rose. This one, what amazed me with this one is despite having this really big, voice, he has great little nuances and great facility with it too.
Well, that's what makes this a great kind of performance. That
was good, and I liked.
That's what really made his Di Provence del Mar from La Traviata work. Okay, because
that's the other one that I put down to track 7, and then track 9, the Nabucco.
Nabucco is the King Nebuchadnezzar. That's his Italian name is Nabucco.
So
I like that one a lot too.
Those are my favorite ones that I thought they can stand on their own. You can listen to them anytime without thinking about the story or too much like that. Amazing vocal performance.
My favorite track is just because I love the whole the power and the just the whole ugliness of the emotion in it is what is it? Credo in un Dio crudele by from Otello, where he's playing Iago. It's a really show-stopping moment if you ever see the opera. Really, really powerful. You know what you're dealing with here, especially if you get a great baritone in that role. Okay, so I really wouldn't mind hearing this guy. He's got such a nice, appealing voice. I wouldn't mind him doing some sort of like a recording of more popular songs. Just
sure. I'd have to see what else he can do.
Maybe a Christmas album or something, It'd be nice. Yeah, why not? Anyway, get on it, Ludovic. Anyway. All right, well.
Individual home recordings and see what you can come up with.
Right. All right, and my last offering for today is we're really stuck in the 19th century and we're going to now enter into the early 20th a bit too with a recording on the Chandos label called Belle Époque, which is French music for wind, performed by the Orsino Ensemble with Pavel Kolesnikov on piano. Kolesnikov records for the Hyperion label. And he's rather an interesting pianist in general. He in his solo recordings, we talked about not on the show, but he did his most recent recording was a set of the Bach Goldberg variations, which was a rather eclectic combination of modern piano and harpsichord techniques that he played on a piano. It kind of came off sounding really unique, and it really depended on your taste whether you liked it or not. Well, anyway, he's in very fine form here. He's got a really light touch when he wants it, and he uses that throughout this recording.
Works well on this French music,
Yeah, on this French music. And oh man, this entire album for me was just a delight from beginning to end. It's all fairly light music. There's a little dark places, but not sinister dark. It's just kind of like darker toned. I'm thinking of the last movement of the André Caplet, which kind of comes across the quintet, Opus 8, which kind of comes across as more kind of dramatic, which is kind of unusual for this music. The French composers of this era were really going for something else. I think they were trying to get away from romantic drama, and they wanted to do something a little lighter, but not without content. Okay, there's a difference. If we understand, you can do like light music, but not lightweight. lightweight means it's no interest harmonically in it or something like that, or it's it's just not inventive. This music is very, very inventive, but it's also not gonna make you feel, it's not gonna weigh you down with its emotions. It's really pleasant, great morning music, sort of like a lot of Baroque music too. It opened. Now I want to mention also the Orsino Ensemble has a the standout player in this one turns out to be the flautist Adam Walker, and we're going to hear more from him next week because I really should have paired these together, but I thought I wanted to. I'll explain why I didn't.
Yeah, you can get a really impressive fat sound out of the flute that's very warm. Yeah. I noticed that in a lot of points on this recording.
Yeah, this album came out at the same time, or a week apart at least, from another album that he's featured on. He's the lead on the whole album, and we'll talk about that one next week. Next week we're going to have all French music, actually, so from the classical department. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited about that. All right, well, this album starts with a work, Divertissement, Opus 6, by Albert Roussel, and this really just sets the mood of this recording exceptionally well. It's Divertissement means like just a fun piece or just something kind of light, and it's just light and chirpy and bouncy. And the thing about French composers that you want to keep in mind, and this is really noticeable with all these variations of wind instruments on this album, is that French composers they generally do, compose to the timbre of the instrument. Like they'll give the piece a certain character depending on what instruments are playing it. Like that'll dictate like what's going to happen in the piece, as opposed to say just being like a coloring. Like composers will like color the melody and pass the melody around.
Really, one of the better ones on the recording because it has the most different timbres. You got flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, horn, and piano. So you have a whole palette.
That's the entire ensemble. In fact,
you got a whole palette in this one song here, this one composition, and all of the instruments are used very interestingly, and so that variety makes it really fun. It's a kind of a lighter movement, but exploring the different instruments and how they work together is really good on this one.
Yeah, fun is a good word for this. This would be a fantastic work to wake up to in the morning. I think it really kind of put you in a good mood for the whole day.
I wrote spirited and dreamy, so when you're sort of not fully awake, this would be a good one.
Yeah, it goes between different melodies, and it starts out in this really spirited, upbeat way, and then goes into a more dreamy, sort of like, sort of daydreamy sort of section. I really loved it. And that really put me in the right mood, and the rest of it just flowed beautifully. Next, we have two works that aren't really very well known by Debussy. Petit Pièce, which is for clarinet and piano. This is very short, 1.5 minutes, but it kind of just sets a mood. And then we get the Première Rhapsodie for clarinet and piano, which I think was a work that he wrote for a student competition. Very moody. The clarinet was still sort of... The clarinet has a really interesting history. It really started with Mozart, like making it a solo instrument first, and then Brahms was really 100 years later was the next composer to really feature it. And then the because of their love of timbre, the French composers really picked it up and went with it. Debussy draws a darker tone out of it. It's kind of he likes to stay in the lower end a lot, I think, in this very moody piece.
Yeah, it's got happy and playful sections, but then it's kind of mysterious and mischievous in other parts. So I think he's exploring the different kind of moods you can get when you go into that lower register, especially. Yeah,
he gets a little jazzy too. You can kind of hear he had a little bit of an ear for jazz as well, or at least the early jazz from the 1910s or so. That sort of thing. Next comes Camille Saint-Saëns, and as we mentioned, this is the 100th anniversary of Saint-Saëns' death this year, so here we have another recording with him on it. The Romance, Opus 36, is they like to do this short, long kind of pairing here. This I forget what this was for. It acts as an introduction to the next, the Caprices sur des airs danois et russes, Danish and Russian songs, and they sound like folk songs to me, and these melodies are just really just grab you by the ear really quickly, as do the instruments that he decides to set, to set with the melodies here.
What I noticed on this one that was interesting to me is not only the blend of the woodwind instruments here, but the way he uses the piano instead of just as a backing instrument with chords. Sometimes he uses the piano in lines along with the instruments to fill out the harmonies, and but they're playing along on the same type of line, which really changes the effect of the balance of because you have these, we're here with flute, oboe, clarinet, so you've got primarily high register, but when you add a piano as another voice or two in that line, you can get a different impression other than just having only high woodwinds there. And so he alternates, and he's able to create even bigger sort of canvas of different effects by using the piano also as a melody instrument, or in part of those lines. So I liked that kind of variety in this piece.
Yeah, he did that to link together these melodies, which are folk melodies. He kind of made them feel a little more sophisticated in that way. Next, we have a concertino, Opus 107, by Cécile Chaminade, a woman composer who's starting to get more notice, which I'm really happy about. There were some great, especially like French women composers who they had their day. When they were alive, they got performances, and then once they died, like, people didn't program them anymore. But now we're starting to hear them a lot again, and they're very much a part of that time. Their music really fits in very well with what was happening, and I'd really like to hear more of this as well. This is a nice piece.
Very modern sounding harmonies in it, I noticed.
1902, so it's
right on the
modernist harmonies, I guess.
Yeah,
this was I didn't get the I wrote down the instrumentation in my device here, but I don't have it ready for me.
This is just flute and piano.
Okay.
But
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
It's got a lot of difficult runs, but the overall mood of it is, it's both stately but also kind of pretty. So it creates with the rhythms in it a kind of dignified presence, but it doesn't doesn't become unattractive at all. The tonality is very beautiful in it. So it was an interesting piece.
Yeah, as it is all through this album. Okay, next we have two nocturnes by Charles Koechlin, a composer who you may not have heard of, but you really should investigate. This is another one of these guys that wrote more pieces than it seems like he could have done in a single lifetime. He's got this huge catalog, maybe of over 400 works or something like that.
Someone I'm not familiar with, really. And yet this one here, the number 7, track 7, this is one of my favorite here, because this is for horn, flute, and piano. Right. And this theme here, the Tranquillo, sad. It's so sad and beautiful at the same time, and it's horn and flute, which really don't, that's pretty opposite timbres, but he uses them so well in the piece.
Because French composers have miraculous ears, he's able to combine them in interesting ways.
The contrast of those two. I had to listen to this one a few times because it's just a great theme in this piece. So, one of my favorites on the whole recording. Yeah,
actually, I have a whole recording of works that he wrote for the horn and piano. You'd probably like it a lot.
I like it.
It's an old one.
Over sometime.
I must have played it for you like decades ago, maybe. But it could be, because I don't think I would have missed that chance. Okay, anyway, after Koechlin, we get to the centerpiece of the recording, which is André Caplet's quintet. This features the entire ensemble along with Kolesnikov on the piano. It's a 4-movement work. It's the only multi-movement work on the recording, and goes through the various. It's a little bit of a. I don't know how to characterize this. It starts out fairly light, but by the end, there's a little bit of darkness and adventure, okay? Right. It's got a really pretty slow movement and a rather jokey, light kind of scherzo movement in the third movement. The fourth movement is surprisingly dramatic and kind of builds to this kind of very satisfying climax. And it's well worth hearing. There are a lot of ideas in it. It's just a kind of little gem that we really should hear more of, really. This is a composer I don't really know anything about either, to be honest. He doesn't get recorded much.
Each of the movements is got a lot of unique things in it. And then, like you said, the fourth one, it's very...
jumps around quite a bit.
It starts out bright and intense, and then you think you know what it's going to be like, and then it has a lot of twists and turns and changes of emotion in it. So I was surprised. I thought, he's already showed a lot of different scenes in the first three movements, so the fourth one is going to be I saw Allegro con fuoco, so I thought it's going to be a straight kind of dash to the end, but no, it's got some other places to go still yet, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a bit of it's a capriccio, what Italians would call a capriccio, which kind of means like a sort of just an imaginative thing. Whatever you want goes on it. It's like a capriccio. Yeah. So a pizza capricciosa would be whatever the pizzaiolo wants to put on it, basically. It's just going to be inventive. And it is that.
It's scary in Japan, though,
In Japan, it could be, yeah. You don't want to tell them what it means.
A little fish with eyeballs and
you don't know what's going to go on there. Oh, or mentaiko, even worse.
Mentaiko.
Oh, man. They put that stuff on spaghetti. I think that's just not right. I don't know. They like it, though. I mean, hey,
I have my own theory of pizza, even though I don't eat it much anymore. It's a very limited... can't be capricciosa at all.
Capriccioso in Italy is always good. It's always it's sort of become a set thing. It just kind of was capriccioso when the guy invented it, I guess. All right, the last work on this is a solo flute work by Debussy called Syrinx, and he phrases this so beautifully. It's got he pulls like all the mystery out of it. There's a lot of modal melody in this, and it outlines like certain harmonies and stuff. It's just a solo flute line. It comes across as very mysterious and kind of like what's the word? I can't think of the adjective for like woodsy or something. From
haunting
something from
descending lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of. He's going for like his favorite kind of Greek theme, and I'm kind of glad that
incidental music for a play or something. In the notes it says, so it was probably he was trying to evoke some certain kind of scene or background with it, and it is very mysterious.
I imagine the flute of Pan or something like that. Something kind of something. Anyway, I was kind of glad that it ended on this one. I was originally thinking of pairing this album with the Adam Walker flute and piano album that I'm going to feature next week, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it ends with Adam Walker here on the flute, and we have like a little ... to lead us into next week. I'm kind of happy about that. When we'll be talking about Adam Walker's solo.
Yeah, gorgeous flute sound.
Recording. Yeah, he has a gorgeous sound and a gorgeous sense of phrasing and dynamics. So I'm really looking forward to hearing next week's recording.
Yeah, this album is it sounds inescapably French in a good way. In a good way. The timbres of each instrument are all duly considered and used to their best advantage. Most of it's right at the end of the.
Kolesnikov's light touch on the piano really makes magic happen too in the pieces that he's on.
Late 19th century, early 20th century, where lots of these interesting harmonic ideas are kind of busting out. And it's light without being frivolous. And it's fun, but also, it takes you into some unexpected places in a lot of the pieces. So I found all of them really enjoying. And as a program, it's all really well matched too. So.
Yeah. I want to mention, this was also the era that Proust's salons were happening in. So we heard those two Proust salon recordings a few weeks back. This could go in with that. And if you think about this era, I don't know what it was. I don't know. People kind of think about the Belle Époque as being a special time. I guess it is if you were like a wealthy person. I mean, if you're a peasant or a working person, I think every era is pretty much the same. But if you were in that class of society, this must have been a really magical time. It was all about to break down, and the music was really magical. By the way, have you ever seen that Woody Allen movie Midnight in Paris?
Yeah, I've seen that, sure.
Yeah, when he manages to go back in time in this coach, and he's in the the 1920s when Hemingway and Fitzgerald are around. He meets this Picasso's girlfriend, Marion Cotillard, who prefers the Belle Époque, and they go back to the Belle Époque. And with the music there, I think I might have, I don't know, I like the 1920s too, but musically it really evokes a magical time, and you get a lot of that on this recording. I would highly recommend that everybody just listen to this just to cheer you up, especially if you're in lockdown, or if, I don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. We're not locked down in Japan, but things are a little depressing here because things are closed. But if you're still feeling like in your house, this can really lift you up. I would give it a listen. Absolutely. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good for the morning. It's good for an afternoon. It's good with some French wine. Anytime, really. This is a good one.
Yeah. All right. And that's what we have. We have this really eclectic, all from the same century, but very different kinds of music this week in classical.
Yeah. I think it's time for some jazz.
Yeah. We're on to the jazz. 20th century. Here we go.
So we're going to go, first of all, Upstream.
Well, 21st century now, I guess, because these are all new.
That's right. Yeah. This one
everything's new in jazz now.
Just been out a week or so. I've been waiting for this album to come out for a while. Because it's by one of my favorite trumpeters, the Russian-born Alex Sipiagin. And
now, how did you hear about this guy?
Well, I'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
This album is Upstream, as I said, on Posi-Tone Records, and it features Alex Sipiagin on trumpet and flugelhorn, Art Hirahara on piano, Boris Kozlov on bass, who we heard back on our Duo by Duo episode 2.
Episode
maybe.
with David Kikoski was the piano on that one. Yeah.
And great young drummer Rudy Royston on drums. And so Sipiagin, I guess he would be 53 years old. He's from Yaroslav, Russia, but he came to New York in 1991. He's got around 18 or so albums as a leader, and he put out a great album at the end of last year called Joust, which is a duet with Kikoski. Just trumpet and piano. That's a really good one. And
I'll have to hear that too. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really nice. And I think I first got to know him from Mingus Big Band. He was involved in earlier. And then he was a member of Kikoski's Opus 5 group, quintet. And that's when I noticed him as a soloist. And I said, this is a guy I want to follow because he's a really unique trumpet player. Though I read in an article that he's leaving New York to move to northern Italy.
But there's good stuff happening there.
Yeah. So we'll have to get in touch with our man on the ground in Milan, old Nathan, and see if Alex Sipiagin is going to be playing out maybe the Blue Note Milan or something. Get him
that could be cool.
That would be good. Anyway, this is one I've been waiting for. And so the album starts out with a song called Call. And you'll get to see the approach that Sipiagin takes in his own music right away here. He sort of abandons traditional kind of diatonic playing, and he goes for a real furious chromatic approach here. So he comes out right out of the gate here with lots of furious chromatics and high screams from the head into his solo. And we've got some really nice piano backing from Hirahara and free drumming from Royston. And then the tune settles down again with some bass and goes back to the theme. And then Sipiagin comes back and he kind of squeezes out some more angst at the end. So you get the feeling this tune is sort of a cathartic release in a sort of modern chromatic style of playing.
When you hear an album that starts like this, you think, "Oh man, this is going to be a really rough outing." But that's actually not the case. This is the only track like this on the album. It's really aggressive. I wrote here.
This tune is really aggressive, which kind of surprises me because if you hear his Joust or what he records with Kikoski, it's much more mainstream. And so I get a feeling, this is sort of a style of playing he's worked to develop. And if the whole album was like that, it might be, a bit like getting hit with a hammer too much.
Well, it depends on what he did with it. But if it was going to,
But it really expresses, this kind of feeling of angst. But that's tempered by the next movement, which is a nice ballad called Echo Canyon. And this is written by the pianist Hirahara. It's a complete change of pace, and Sipiagin switches over to flugelhorn, and he has some really nice lyrical playing. And his sound on flugelhorn is really centered. It's not one of these like fluffy sounds, but it's a rounded tone, but like I say, it's a focused kind of sound. Then Hirahara has a nice piano sound with like really huge chords. And Sipiagin really, then he comes back and he pushes hard on the flugelhorn, goes up higher than you might normally hear on this instrument, but then he brings it down to a mellow close at the end. The third track is called Sight. And this starts out with some nice bouncing bass, and Hirahara switches over to the Rhodes piano, which is always nice to hear sometimes, some electric piano.
Well, these days, back in the day, I was getting fed up with it, but now it's nice to hear because it's such an old sound that doesn't get used so much anymore.
And so this tune has a nice syncopated trumpet theme, a lot of tasty drumming, in feeding another kind of really searchingly harmonic trumpet solo. And you get a sense by this far that Sipiagin doesn't play cliches, so he doesn't really sound like any other players too much. He's really interested in doing his own thing. And there's a nice Rhodes piano solo in this tune too. And for the next tune, we're on to Sipatham, which I believe is some kind of combination of his name and his wife's name. But here we're back to acoustic piano. It's kind of an interesting melody that pauses, and under it the rhythm and motion makes a nice, interesting contrast. And Sipiagin has another adventurous solo here. A nice piano solo with lots of inventive rhythmic improvisations, and then the trumpet and piano trade to the end, sort of bringing us to a finish.
Yeah, one of the things I wrote about this album, by the way, I've in my notes, I've just got remarking on the piano all the way through is Art Hirahara. He's a fantastic pianist.
He's really great.
He really makes this album. Well, so does Sipiagin, but I was really being pulled in by his playing a lot, and keep an ear out for that when you give this a listen, which you should
it's a really
absolutely
nice touch do. And very intriguing sound. The next tune is Magic Square, and this is by Kozlov. Back to a Rhodes piano and also electric bass, so it sort of changes the whole mood here. What I liked about this one is the bass doubles the trumpet melody. So you have bass and trumpet on the lead sound, but when the trumpet leaves gaps in the melody, the bass goes back to adding fills in. So it's a really interesting effect, having the melody in both the bass and the trumpet. In the drums, there's lots of changing up of these hard driving drum beats, which lock in with the bass and keyboards as support from the rhythm section. And then you get a muted solo here by Sipiagin, which is kind of cool, and then a drum solo with a lot of tricky tom work for a different effect in this one. So it's kind of
this is practically a rock drum solo. In fact, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, this one is getting more towards a fusion-y sound with that electric bass and the heavy drums, right?
Right.
It was exciting.
It was exciting.
Yeah, nice contrast.
Exciting track. Yeah.
And then we get to a really pretty one called Rain. And this is where Hirahara really shines here. It's a ballad with a really sparse piano opening, and the bass comes in really, really low, down in the lowest register. And then Sipiagin plays flugel on the uplifting melody, which is nice. Really delicate piano solo with a nice touch and a well-composed flugel solo. A tasty kind of bass interlude. You can almost like taste the wood of the bass. It's so woody sounding, especially after that electric tune. And then again, Sipiagin doesn't hold back. He pushes that flugel for a bit. You think this is going to be an easy ballad, but he has to get a little bit of that angst out again. But he brings it back down to a kind of mellow finish. Then we've got a tune called Shura. And this is also by Kozlov, a real funky bass intro. It's in kind of a 6/8 meter with interesting syncopated figures. And Sipiagin's solo here is really amazing. It's got a lot of really long flowing lines, but all the ideas are really interconnected. It kind of remind me a lot of Tom Harrell's soloing. And Tom Harrell doesn't really, play in a similar way to Sipiagin, but this ability to sort of make real compositions in improvised solos with connecting ideas that cross over, different, phrase things, and the ideas continue logically really well, so they get this inevitable kind of quality to them. And so that was this solo I thought was particularly well thought out, or even on the spot. We get a nice piano solo over some subdivided drumming, and then again, and the drum solo over, but not alone, over piano and bass that kind of pushes it to the end. So it's kind of a neat tune by Kozlov. He seems to be have a knack for composing real catchy tunes. Then we've got the only non-band composed song. We've got a cover of the Wayne Shorter tune Miyako, which I believe was the name of his daughter. I think he married a Japanese-American woman for a short time, although it didn't work out. And some of his tunes are credited to like Miyako Music or something sometimes. So and this one really gets the proper ballad treatment. Sipiagin, he pays respect to this Wayne Shorter composition. The melody is really tenderly played on the flugelhorn, and his solo is really relaxed, pulling the beauty out of the notes. So a nice treatment of this Wayne Shorter classic original tune. And the album finishes up with a tune called Upstream, which I read was maybe inspired by a painting of like Volga boatmen or something pulling a boat up the stream. But this is kind of cool. Back to the Rhodes. It starts with a kind of hypnotic alternating chord Rhodes intro, and then Sipiagin builds on the tension implied in that kind of harmony. We've got electric bass again here. He really does some chromatic gymnastics in the trumpet solo here. The piano solo is cool again over this really tight drum and bass groove, and really great drumming on the whole album. And this song here, and a nice tight solo. So it kind of goes back to the kind of mood that was set at the beginning of the album with Call. So all in all, it's a really interesting album. The players who support Sipiagin here are all really great and have their own unique personality, and you can see what his approach is with particularly his use of harmony and the lines that he highlights in his solos. He's really one of the more forward-thinking trumpet players out there, and I think he should be better known. But if he is really going to Italy, we'll have to see what happens next with him. But he's a player I always find really interesting, and always looking forward to see what kind of new releases he has.
Maybe he's going to Italy to play with Enrico Pieranunzi, which is another great pianist that we discovered earlier this year. Or at least I did anyway.
Yeah.
It would be great, yeah. I don't know that he'd get more famous in Italy, but I don't know, maybe he feels like he's exhausted New York and he's ready for something new. Certainly there are a lot of great players in Italy, even though in the United States, you never hear about them. Maybe in Japan, we're a little more well-placed to kind of get the whole map, because Japanese people really love jazz, actually. Like older Japanese people tend to really love it. So they have their ears out for really anything, not just American jazz or what's going on in America. Yeah,
but they tend to sometimes miss the sort of newest players on the international scene. So,
yeah, that's true. I want to say, though, speaking of great pianists, Art Hirahara, I want to hear a solo album by him. This was just fantastic. I was really enjoying his playing throughout this record. He had a lot of really interesting ideas, beautiful technique, really nice light sound. And a good touch, a light touch. I really enjoyed his playing a lot, so I'm kind of curious to see where else he pops up.
I'll take a look and see what.
Okay, write that down. Maybe we'll do a future. Hirahara.
Hirahara. I don't know.
Hirahara.
Nisei, Japanese American.
Is he a Nisei Japanese American?
Could be.
I don't know.
I'll find out. Yeah, because I really enjoyed his playing here. We got to hear more.
Too. Yeah, he stood out for me. throughout the album, not just on one track either.
Right.
Just on every track, it's like, oh, this is the pianist is really great here.
Yep. All right, Art, we're going to be listening for you.
We are.
All right, next up, this is coming on the heels of an album that got a lot of attention last year by Ron Miles, the trumpet player. And he had that album last year with Bill Frisell. And
which one was this? The Valentine, that one?
Is that it? No.
Is he on that? No, I know. Or the Americana one?
No, it's not the Americana one. It's the other one. I can't. The title slips my mind now. I know you really liked it though, because I think you told me about it to begin with. But Miles was.
I don't remember what it is. This is really horrible.
Miles has been, big figure on the Denver jazz scene for a long time.
Oh, the Ron Miles album, Rainbow Sign. Okay, I'm sorry. It wasn't a Bill Frisell album. That's why I was confused. Okay. Yeah. Rainbow Sign.
Rainbow Sign, that's it. Yeah. And so, a lot of people have said, if he would just leave Denver, he would be a much bigger name, or, if he had come to New York or something like that. But what intrigued me about this album is that it's by a group called the Jazz Worms, which is a Denver-based group, and that's the whole appeal of it. And, for Jazz Worms, the album is appropriately entitled Squirmin'. Yeah. And it's on the Capri label. So the Jazz Worms were formed as a group way back in 1984. And if you're wondering why they came up with this name, it's kind of an acronym based on the first initial of all the players' last names.
The Worms part.
The Worms part, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they made an initial recording debut in 1987 called Crawling Out, another wormy title. And
another wormy title.
They've gone on to do their own different things, but this is kind of more than 30 years later. They get back together and do another session together. And so the original and also present here, Worms, are pianist Andy Wheel, saxophonist Keith Oxman, drummer is Paul Romaine, and on cornet, Ron Miles, and bass, Mark Simon. And so they've got a set of all new material, and it sort of continues the story of where they were before. And I kind of like that because, Denver is not a place that probably most international people think of as having a unique jazz scene. But this is an interesting recording, and it goes to show you that there's really interesting jazz happening on any kind of local scene around the world out there. So this one starts out with a tune called Launching Pad. It's a good place to start. And this is by Simon, the bassist here. Starts with a nice bass and drum groove, intermittent horn lines. They sort of start and stop. And then it slows down with the bass a few times and back to the groove. And it's really interesting things they do with structure through this whole album, but you get it right here. The trumpet and sax kind of have a modal interplay that eventually turns into a sax solo, but it doesn't really go to one complete solo by one player at the beginning, which is kind of unique. Let me get
this is very much an ensemble recording. No one really takes center stage. That's really what I think what it's all about. They do set some pretty awesome grooves throughout the entire record.
They do. Then we get some sparse piano, and the horns come back to finish. Then we've got a tune by Romaine, the drummer, and he's got two tunes here that from the notes on the release, they're based on his pet birds. That's why they have these kind of weird titles. But number 2 is called Booze Box.
I like a good weird title.
Yeah. And so this starts over a drum beat with trading trumpet and sax improvised phrases that come into a unison. Then a real funky bass and piano backing enters into a bluesy piano solo. The sax and trumpet trade again, and then the beat intensifies, and then everything kind of disperses to the end. Again, a kind of really balanced ensemble type of approach to it.
We could all use a booze box, couldn't we?
Booze. Yeah, that spelling would be different, but yeah, booze.
I think some of the words you're using, like intermittent, sparse, they're really good words to really kind of summarize this entire album, and not in any kind of bad way, but it's just sort of everybody kind of gets like a turn, and they're rather modest at the turns that they take.
Exactly.
Like the entire ensemble sound is really what's important here.
These are mature guys playing, and they're not trying to outdo each other or show anyone up. And they're very relaxed with each other because they've known each other for a long time. And so that all the compositions have a lot of space in them. There's no real rushing through, even on fast tempos. And so you can really examine the structures of what's going on, because there's little interludes and exchanges that happen a lot in here. The third tune is called Joaquin. This is also by Oxman. Starts with some spacious piano chords and drumming, and that opens up into like an upbeat swinging melody that's played in unison with the cornet and sax, and sometimes becomes harmonized, but sometimes unison. And Miles uses a cup mute in the trumpet here, I believe, so you get a nice little tonal variation. Then you get a Rob Miles solo, and he's not a guy who's ever going to overplay. So I wrote that this is kind of it's a relaxed stroll of a solo. It just sounds like he's meandering down the street on a nice day. Oxman comes in on sax, but he's a little bit quicker in step in his solo, but it still stays pretty relaxed. Then we've got a bass solo over piano. And the drums just sneak in lightly, and then everyone's back to the happy melody and out with some spacey chords and drumming. So this one's really kind of a really happy sounding nice piece here. The next one is called Lickety Split, and this is by Wheel again. This one starts with some really intense syncopated chords on a piano, and those kind of propel another kind of horn phrases that are intermittent in the melody into a bass solo with drums but no piano backing, and then chords into like a real chimey piano solo with a lot of rhythmic focus, and then there's a sax solo that's kind of legato but has some real strong honks for punctuation, and then it returns to the theme. So this is a fun one too. And after that, another one of Romain's bird-based tunes called Weedy Ball. I guess his other bird's name is Weedy. And you get start and stop rhythm with horn lines. It's really fun right at the top of the tune. A really hard swing beat is established, and that goes into the sax solo. A nice bass solo, a very chordy based piano solo, and the drum solo here I like because the drum solo is broken up with horn hits, but they're sort of longer tones, and so it's kind of nice to have a piano solo where the horns come in, or a drum solo where the horns come in, and then you get a really puckish Ron Miles offbeat kind of solo here, which is is kind of like he's blowing kisses out with that one. It's kind of fun. Then we've got a tune called What If All. There's got also some broken up piano phrases that go into these start and stop horn lines. I don't know, it sounds like this one's in 12/8 time or something. The piano solo here is interesting. It really keeps you guessing as to what's going on. But Ron Miles comes in and kind of relaxes everything with a real chilled out solo, and bass solo. It takes a turn into some interesting intervals and then back to the head. And then we've got Balladesque, which is, as it says, very ballad-like by Wheel. A nice slow ballad with offset accented horn lines. The sax and trumpet are sort of complementing each other. Very lyrical solos from Ron Miles trumpet and Oxman on sax, and a real delicate touch piano solo that has these rising chords that build to a nice climax. And the album ends with a tune called The Cimento Files. I guess it's written for a friend, also by Oxman. And this is kind of a swinging blues with a few unexpected chord twists in it. There's a fun sax solo. It's got some real fast-fingered lines. When the trumpet comes in, you think you're going to get a trumpet solo, but no, it's actually a trade-off with the drums. They trade phrases. A playful piano solo. He's got lots of rolling kind of phrases in it, and then choppy chords, and then the drums and the bass trade fours before it goes back to the head and closes out the program. So it's a really enjoyable recording, by some veteran players from the Denver scene, and you can tell they're old friends. There's a lot of variety in the material, a lot of space. Nobody overplays here. It's just good music played well, and you can tell these are old friends having fun. So recommended for a nice variety jazz release.
Yeah, it's a light and fun album. It's not very challenging on the brain, and that's just perfect. I would recommend this highly. In fact, I'm going to put this in my CD collection, as I was delighted to find that it is available on CD. I want to say something about, it was good to hear. Now, I want to say something about the album cover, which is pretty interesting. They released the album Crawling Out back in the early 1980s, and it was released on a vinyl LP. And then I guess it just went out of print when they went their separate ways and never made another album until Squirmin, this one. This is 30 years later. This is only their second album as an ensemble. And the album cover for Squirmin is the same as the Crawling Out album. I think the background is different, but it's the same design, and all the guys are in the same position, except that now they're 30 years older.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the Red and the Blue albums by the Beatles, where you see them in that apartment sort of complex, like leaning over the banister, and they're just older in the in the later one. So I thought that was a nice touch. I want to make a request. If you guys have released the CD, why not go back, remaster the Crawling Out album, put it out on vinyl LP again, and release a CD version of it for the first time? I would buy that.
I'd like to hear it.
I'm sure other people would as well. Let's have it.
Yeah, especially since Miles has gotten well known now.
Right.
I'm sure some people would want to purchase that, go back and hear
I do.
it.
Yeah. Put that in my collection, and then 20 years from now, when it's out of print again, I'll pull it off the shelf and enjoy it again.
Yeah. So fun one.
Right.
Yeah. I've tried to pick music that a variety of things internationally. Of course, I'm looking at the new jazz releases almost every day to find interesting things. There's so much more coming out of Europe now than there is coming out of the U.S. on a daily basis of new releases. There's 2 or 3 times as many things to look through.
I wonder if that's because of the lockdown and the closure of the jazz clubs, that people aren't performing. I don't really know.
I don't know.
What do you think?
But when I, of course, the largest majority of U.S. recordings I see are out of the main, jazz scenes, New York especially. So when I saw something, out of a different location, that also was intriguing to me too. So, Denver.
In Denver, huh?
There you go. Yeah. All right, so that's our local jazz scene release. And so what's left to cover in an episode but Latin jazz and violin?
Which is my favorite kind of jazz. Well, the Latin jazz part. The violin part I love too. And here they are both together.
So I saw this and I thought, well, you don't get to hear jazz violin all that much. And we've done some, Mike and I both like Latin jazz a lot. And here we've got Venezuelan music. And I thought
you don't get to hear too much of this either.
Yeah. So
Venezuelan Latin jazz.
I thought we'd go for it here. And we've got the new album by Bello and the Sweet Wire Band called Inheritance. And this is on Tiger Turn Records.
And not available on CD, unfortunately. At least I didn't see it.
And there's not a lot of information available about the recording. Some of it's sketchy, so I had to combine with what I was hearing and what I could kind of figure out. There's some bio information on him. So he is a Venezuelan-born, New York-based violinist and composer. And this album is all original set of 9 compositions, and he's here with his Sweetwire band, which includes pianist Gabriel Chakarji, bassist Gabriel Vivas, drummer Ismael Baiz, and percussionist Manuel Marquez, who plays a number of traditional Venezuelan drums, such as the fulia, the paella, the cumaco, and others.
I don't know what any of those are, by the way.
Yeah. He's also, found with other mainstream artists. He's recorded, tracks with Beyonce, The Roots, and Jay-Z, which may be why I don't know him, because I don't think I've ever played a Jay-Z recording myself. Probably won't. So he's sort of multi-genre and well-known. And on this album, he's got some special guests too, surprisingly, but notably the jazz violinist Regina Carter, saxophonist Jaleel Shaw, another saxophonist Jeff Lederer, and playing a Venezuelan 4-stringed kind of guitar instrument, Jorge Glem, the Cuatro, which is kind of interesting. So I didn't know quite what to expect here, but
me neither.
The album starts out with a tune called Kaleidoscopic Sunset, and as you're going to hear on all of this album, if you listen to it, it's based around many types of Afro-Venezuelan rhythms. So there's all kinds of rhythms in here. They all have names. Some of them I saw in the descriptions. I'm not really familiar with all of these different, Venezuelan rhythm types and the different instruments, but they're very
different too than the Cuban grooves that we're familiar with from this genre. It's a real, happy surprise really for me.
They're really distinctive, yeah, and there's a lot of rhythmic variety in all these tracks. So this tune starts out with a synthy electric piano sound, which I'll talk more about later. And then for leads with the melody, the sort of unexpected combination of violin and soprano sax. This is a very unusual combination of timbres that normally you would not put together, because they're sort of right in that same kind of range. But it does produce an interesting effect. So we've got this combination, and it's rather a lyrical melody. One thing that stands out on this album is a pulsating electric bass. The bass is really center stage, even though, even in a background role, it's a really thick instrument that's integral to all of these different rhythms, and fine bass player here, Gabriel Vivas. So the melody is lyrical over this pulsating electric bass and very busy percussion. And then Bello's violin solo, it starts softly, but he really builds tension. And what you can see is he's got a lot of passion in his playing. And one thing that he's really good at, kind of amazing in a way, is he can change the tone, the timbre of his instrument, depending on what he wants to express. He can get a really sort of beautiful mellow sound, but he can also put an edge on his sound at will, and so that aspect comes out through all of his solos. And then after the violin solo, which sort of introduces you to his sound, we've got a piano solo, and then it goes into a little breakdown, and then the violin and the soprano sax trade off until the end. The second tune is called Heartbeat. And this one starts with kind of a heartbeat pulse in the bass that, is sort of emulating a heartbeat. And then we get a swirling piano. Again, more dual lines of soprano, sax, and violin. And the previous tune and this tune, although it's only listed in this tune on the credits, is Jaleel Shaw. And a kind of subdued sax solo starts to build, and Shaw has a really nice soprano tone. It's not honky. It doesn't sound like a Yugo horn, because soprano can be kind of ugly in the wrong hands. But he has a kind of a compelling tone, and then after his solo, it mellows out again, and the violin comes in over the heartbeat for another interesting solo. And he builds tension really well in his solos, lots of fast lines and really edgy in some spots. So this is kind of an appealing number. Then we've got number 3, Caracas. The keyboard starts it out with an alternating chord riff intro. Some nice chord changes under the violin melody. Great bass lines in this tune. Lots of rhythmic changes and interesting accents. Got some nice violin solos, electric piano, some nice bass part that goes into a break, and then the melody returns. The 4th tune is called Song to Marina, and this is where Regina Carter guests. And this is sort of a bolero style tune, and they use a much more lush tone here. You get solos from each, but they blend together surprisingly well when trading lines with each other, but also backing each other. So they actually kind of they don't sound too distinctive here. They sort of meld in a tonal mind here.
Regina Carter really is an ideal soloing partner for that sort of thing. Whenever she's got like a solo on a recording, she'll just she listens a lot, and she'll kind of fit in with what's being played, which is what everybody really should do. But she's exceptionally good at it. Really, I've noticed that about her.
They're not competing here at all. They're just melding together, which is nice. The next tune is called Bello's Blues, and this has some really complex rhythms in the intro, and if you're expecting a regular blues, you'll be left wondering. It's got some unusual harmonies to back up the melody, some interesting breaks, and it does end the phrase with kind of a bluesy end, and they say, "Oh, okay, so here's the blues." This one, we've got electric piano solo where the tone is changed to kind of a heavier, distorted sound. I think it may be because he's in the lower register. A really harmonically complex alto solo from Jaleel Shaw here. He's going way out there, but he tempers that with just enough like bluesy phrases in there. So it's a nice combination of blues and exploration of the harmonies going on here. Then,
and I was one. Yeah, go ahead. You go to the next track, or I want to say something about this one.
Yeah. Then you get a electric wah-wah violin
That's
solo.
what I was going to say.
From Bello, which I wasn't expecting. He saved it.
Neither was I. I was going to ask, was that a wah-wah pedal?
Yeah. And so, he pulls out the kind of, rock guitar experience on this one. You get some really cool bowing effects that sound like shredding on an electric guitar. And it's not gratuitous at all. He uses it quite musically, and I was kind of impressed with some good humor too. And the tune gets a big bluesy ending at the end too. But then this curious about this track, it sort of stops, and after an interval of silence, there's a percussion breakdown that seems kind of unrelated to the rest of the tune, and goes on for a while to the end of the track. So I don't know what that's supposed to be. It's kind of like a little hidden passage in the tune. What did you think about the wah-wah on the violin?
I thought it really kind of opened up my imagination for the possibilities of the wah-wah pedal on the violin. I think I know what I want for my birthday this year. I don't know if we're big enough to request this yet, but I would like the violinist Patricia Kopachinskaya to play the first movement of the first sonata from the Bach sonatas and parties for solo violin through a wah-wah pedal. I think that would make my day.
It'd be interesting.
Now this was intriguing. That really caught my ear. I was like, I really kind of just suspended my thought, and I was just kind of like just imagining the possibilities of this. I thought it was a great track.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he uses for regular equipment. I'm assuming he's probably using some sort of close pickup system for all of his things. So to get that really strong kind of close sound in all of his tunes, so it's probably just a matter of plugging into some pedal or something like that. But yeah, I thought it was nice, and he saved it kind of till you get in the middle of the album and weren't expecting it, and so it adds to the.
And he also had the sense not to use it again, so it just kind of, it doesn't become like a gimmick, It's sort of it's just this little surprise for this one track. It is fantastic.
Yeah. Then we've got track 6, Jojo. This is featuring Jeff Lederer, and this tune is in 5, so 5 beats per measure, and it gives it a nice sense of motion. And here, although it's not credited as a guest by Jorge Glem, you can hear the quattro strumming in the background, this 4-stringed guitar-like instrument here. And then violin and clarinet share the melody together, which is a nice combination, Lederer on clarinet. And then you get a fabulous clarinet solo from Jeff Lederer. For me, this was the highlight solo of the whole album. What an amazing tone and fluid lines. He sounds really fabulous on clarinet. So I was really blown away by this track.
Yeah. It's getting better as it goes. Yeah. I really like this as well. Yeah.
Then we've got track 7, For All Saints, and kind of a new rhythm is established. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure they have a name
sort of like
for
a
it.
New Orleans sort of march rhythm, I thought, or something. Maybe that's where the Saints come from.
Could be.
The Saints.
Yeah, they're like a Latin Saints go marching in thing or something. Yeah. I don't know. But we get trombone here, which you would want on Saints Go Marching In. But I don't know who's playing it because it's not credited here in the listing. But so we get trombone and sax with the violin. And we get solos all around. And after the solos, we get some kind of spirited jamming together, in that kind of Saints tradition, and some solo breaks to the end. So that's kind of a fun one. Then we get a really great track, 8, I guess this Sepa. And this is featuring Jorge Glem. And so he starts out on his quattro strumming. And so you're like, oh, okay, it's a 4-stringed instrument. He's going to strum this. But then you get a really interesting solo on the quattro also. And he gets a really cool, tight sound out of this instrument. And it's a really driving tempo set by the percussion here. A nice bass solo and a couple breaks over some very kind of light percussion, like shaking or something. It's a very light effect, and then the tune really builds and charges to the end. But Glem is really a virtuoso of this instrument. He can really shred the chords and also play solo lines. So I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Makes me want to buy one of these and see what I can do with it.
All right. That would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, 4 strings. How can you go wrong? It's better than Frank. We can go 7-string guitar. I would never want to try to play that. I wouldn't know what to do with that extra string. 4, I could kind of come up with something. And we close out the album with Oisia, and this is back with Lederer, I believe, on tenor sax here. And so we get a nice melody on tenor sax and violin over complex rhythms. And then we get sax and violin solos, a nice bass solo here too, and then a funky breakdown with piano and rhythm before we go back to the melody. But it really pushes to the end, propelled by the percussion to close out the album. So, this album, you get a lot of different traditional and modern rhythms and different styles from Venezuelan music. So it's kind of a lesson in, the intricacies of one country's traditions. And Bello himself is a really exciting violinist. He combines high-level improvisations with full knowledge and interesting use of the cultural heritage of rhythms from his country. And I like his choice of soloists that add a lot of variety to the tunes. These different instruments, especially, as I mentioned, the clarinet. There's one thing I didn't really care for by the end of the album. I don't know if you guess what it is, Mike.
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know.
It's really this electric piano sound.
The one they get on this particular record?
This record, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't have that full Rhodes sound. It's more of like I'm not sure which piano model it is, or if it's emulating that, but it has a very synthy type of sound to it.
Oh yeah,
and it's on
kind of
every
like the 80s, huh?
Yeah, every single tune. And I would have just wished for a little bit more variety in the keyboard sound. I think what different tones would have worked better on some of these songs.
There was certainly a lot of other like timbral interest going on. Yeah. It would have been nice to have that, I guess, too, as well.
That one
I think I was so focused in on that wah wah violin.
Oh yeah.
It just blew all that keyboard stuff out of my head. I don't know. And then the clarinet solo, like that you mentioned, and all of that. So yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, but
nevertheless, this is an album I would gladly add to my CD collection were it available on CD. So I'm just going to throw that out there in case somebody's listening and wants to print up a CD of this album.
What is it?
Professionally made one, of course, not an MP3 one.
Tiger Turn. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that label.
I don't know what they got.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. I mean, to get Venezuelan influenced jazz, but then also with violin, it's kind of a unique combination. So, it was well worth checking out, and it's exciting. And as a player, I'd like to hear him in different contexts too, because he's really on fire and very passionate. So, kind of a spirit on violin is interesting.
So this week we had like an hour and 40 minutes of solo violin, followed by just this timbral spectacular. All kinds of odd instruments blending and combining together, and sometimes not combining together, and just making for some really interesting music.
It's a real tonal smorgasbord this week.
Yeah.
Of tunes.
I think that might be the title right there. A tonal smorgasbord.
Wow.
Well, maybe we'll come up with something else. We'll see. Tonal something. A timbral. Timbral. A timbral buffet, as it were.
Timbral buffet. I like that.
Timbral.
We'll see what sticks.
Might be a good band. That'd be a good band name. Timbral buffet.
Yeah. I like to mention to our listeners too that the Ibragimova violin Paganini releases on Hyperion, which means it's not on streaming.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear this one, you'll have to purchase it. It's not on Apple.
You can sample it though on Hyperion's site.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put a link to the Hyperion with that, just so you can.
Or you can come over to my place and I'd be glad to play it for you. If you can get a plane ticket to Japan,
you might get some intimacy with that too. Be careful.
Well, you never know. It depends. Yeah, I guess. There's a lot of intimacy I'm not interested in.
And also the Ludovic Tézier Verdi on Sony.
Sony, another record label that doesn't put their
Sony
stuff on.
Kind of stingy. But this one you can listen to on Apple Music, and you can listen to it on Spotify, but Deezer doesn't have rights to it. So it won't be in the Deezer playlist, unfortunately. So if you're listening Deezer, come on, negotiate and get these Sony recordings also on.
Yeah, Deezer, come on. You've got a Japanese outlet now. You can just go right to the source there.
That's right. We'd be glad to help you out with that. Go twist some arms and do whatever it takes.
We'll go in there like Steve Jobs did like 30 years ago and say, hey, what's going on?
Come on. Open it up. Open up that market. All right. So it's been episode 14 of Adult Music. We'll be back next week with I guess,
French Spectacular.
A French buffet next week.
You're all going to get Frenched next week.
Ooh.
I bet you can't wait.
It's a good thing I have some French blood already. So I'll be warmed up for that.
Okay.
And I'll see what I can come up with the jazz selections. And I'd like to remind you that we can hear almost all of the tunes this week, but most of the recordings from each week's episode all in one place on Deezer. Just look for the Adult Music podcast playlist. There's one for each episode, and now that Deezer has been rolling out podcasts in Japan finally and some other countries, you can find our podcast there too. And wherever you listen to us, please follow or subscribe. Leave a comment or a ranking for us. It'll help us get some more exposure and grow our audience. So until next time, this has been Adult Music, the podcast with music for the mature mind, and we'll see you next week.